Hello. Welcome back to STM Narratives. Before we begin, please comment where you are watching from and the time. Cedarville was a town with picture-perfect charm. White picket fences, cobblestone streets, and the faint scent of cinnamon rolls from Mrs. Abernathy's bakery that wafted through the air every morning. Beneath its postcard-worthy exterior, however, simmered deep-seated prejudices that many refused to acknowledge. It was early November, the air crisp and leaves scattering like confetti along the sidewalks. Raymond King was out for his morning run. A tall, broad-shouldered black man in his late 30s, Ray was known around the neighborhood as a kind soul who often stopped to chat with the elderly or help kids fix their bike chains. His demeanor was as warm as his ever-present smile. Today, though, his thoughts were preoccupied. He had just landed a new job as an operations manager at a local factory, a big achievement he had worked years for. "Morning, Ray." Mrs. Abernathy waved as he jogged past the bakery. "Morning, ma'am. Smells amazing as always," Ray replied, grinning. As he turned a corner near the Cedar River Bridge, something caught his attention, a piercing scream. The scream came from a woman clinging desperately to the edge of the bridge. Her blonde hair whipped wildly in the wind, and her terrified eyes darted around for help. Below her, the river surged with icy ferocity. Ray didn't hesitate. Sprinting toward her, he shouted, "Hold on! I'm coming!" The woman's fingers were slipping. "Please hurry. I can't hold on much longer." Ray dropped his phone and jacket on the bridge and leaned over the edge. His strong hands grasped her wrists just as her grip faltered. She gasped as he pulled her upward with surprising ease, his muscles straining but steady. "Got you," he said firmly, his deep voice calming her panic. He hoisted her back onto the bridge and sat her down, kneeling beside her to catch his breath. The woman sobbed, trembling. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I thought I was going to die." Ray smiled gently. "Glad you're safe. What happened?" She wiped her tears. "I slipped trying to take a photo. Stupid, I know." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Hey, accidents happen," Ray said, standing up and offering her a hand. "What matters is you're okay now." She took his hand hesitantly, looking up at him with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. "I'm Emily, by the way. Emily Turner." "Raymond King. Nice to meet you, Emily," he replied, before their conversation could continue. The squeal of tires shattered the moment. A sleek black SUV screeched to a halt near the bridge. A man stormed out, his face twisted in fury. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and a sharp suit that looked out of place in the small town. "Emily!" the man shouted, rushing toward her. "Are you okay? What happened?" "I'm fine, Jack," Emily said, her voice still shaky. "This man saved me. I almost fell into the river." Jack turned his cold, steely gaze on Ray. His eyes narrowed, and his lips curled into a sneer. "This man?" Ray extended a hand. "Sir, I'm glad I could help. She's safe now." But Jack ignored the gesture. Instead, he stepped closer, his chest puffed out. "What were you doing near my wife?" Ray blinked, taken aback. "Helping her. She was about to fall." "Sure you were," Jack spat, his tone dripping with suspicion. Emily stepped between them. "Jack, stop. He saved my life. You should be thanking him." But Jack wasn't listening. His voice rose. "I don't know what your game is, but I don't need you meddling in my family's business." Ray's expression hardened, though his voice remained calm. "There's no game, sir. Just doing what anyone should." "Anyone?" Jack scoffed, his face reddening. "Don't play the hero. People like you." "People like me?" Ray interrupted, his tone sharp now. The tension was palpable. Emily tugged on Jack's arm. "Jack, enough. You're being ridiculous." But Jack shrugged her off. "Ridiculous? I find my wife with some stranger, and I'm supposed to just believe his story?" The commotion had drawn a small crowd. Among them was Mrs. Abernathy, still clutching a tray of pastries, and old Mr. Jenkins, who shuffled closer with his cane. "You've got some nerve, talking to me like that," Jack continued, jabbing a finger at Ray. Ray held his ground. "With all due respect, sir, I don't owe you an explanation. I saw someone in danger and did what I could. If that's a problem for you, it says more about you than me." The crowd murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged uneasy glances. "Apologize?" Emily demanded, glaring at her husband. Jack waved her off dismissively. "Stay out of this, Emily." "Enough." The voice came from an unexpected source, Mrs. Abernathy. The elderly baker stepped forward, her normally sweet demeanor replaced by a fiery determination. "Jack Turner, you should be ashamed of yourself," she said, her voice ringing out like a bell. Jack turned to her, startled. "Stay out of this, Helen." "I won't," Mrs. Abernathy said firmly. She pointed at Ray. "This man just saved your wife's life, and instead of thanking him, you're treating him like a criminal. Do you even hear yourself?" Jack opened his mouth to respond, but Mrs. Abernathy didn't give him the chance. "This isn't about what happened here, is it? It's about what he looks like. You didn't even ask questions. You just saw a black man and assumed the worst. That's racism, plain and simple." The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Emily folded her arms. "She's right, Jack. You need to stop." Jack looked around, suddenly aware of the eyes on him. His bravado faltered, replaced by a flicker of embarrassment. Mrs. Abernathy wasn't done. "Raymond is one of the kindest people in this town. He's helped me more times than I can count. Can you say the same about yourself, Jack?" Jack shifted uncomfortably. You've got a lot to think about," she said, her tone softening but remaining firm. "And maybe it's time you start questioning why you reacted the way you did." Jack's shoulders slumped. He turned to Ray, his expression a mixture of guilt and reluctance. I might have overreacted." Ray raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting. "I'm sorry," Jack finally muttered. Emily sighed in relief. "That's a start." Ray nodded, his voice calm but firm. "Apology accepted. But think about what Mrs. Abernathy said. Your reaction could have been different. Should have been different." Jack nodded, avoiding eye contact. The crowd began to disperse, the tension easing. Mrs. Abernathy patted Ray on the arm. "Thank you, Raymond. You're a good man." "Just doing what I'd want someone to do for me," Ray said, his smile returning. Emily turned to Ray, her eyes sincere. "Thank you again. I'm sorry for everything." "Take care, Emily," Ray said before jogging off, leaving the Turners standing on the bridge. The next morning, Ray was back on his usual route. As he passed the bakery, Mrs. Abernathy waved him over. "On the house," she said, handing him a warm cinnamon roll. Ray chuckled. "Thanks, ma'am." As he walked away, he noticed Jack Turner sitting on a bench near the river, deep in thought. Ray didn't stop, but for the first time, he saw something in Jack's expression that looked like reflection, and maybe, just maybe, change. Cedarville wasn't perfect, but moments like these made Ray hopeful that it could become a little better.